Usopp is a boring annoyance who weighs the crew down and doesn't contribute anything. All of these factors create the worst take I've ever fucking heard. Usopp is none of those things, and I believe some people need a fresh recap of his story to understand such. In this video, I'll go over his actual character, why he's an integral member of the Straw Hats, plus a little power scaling in between. Speaking of, for the boneheads who think Usopp is lame because he doesn't fight, he never even does anything cool, bro, please exit the video because you're probably under the age of 10 and should be watching YouTube Kids. First of all, not every character can be as cool as Captain fucking Levi. In fact, the only reason people like Levi or Zoro look as cool as they do is because there are those like Usopp who have less aura by comparison. Imagine if all the Straw Hats were powerful, getting their own individual fights every arc where they grow exponentially. That would be boring. That would be Dragon Ball levels of boring. In addition, Uso is supposed to be the audience anchor, the normal guy on the ground like you and me. When Zoro cuts a mountain in half, we react crazy due to Usopp reacting crazy. Whereas when Goku blows up the 6th multiverse and nobody cares, we don't care either, despite it being a better feat. With that being said, I still hate it when people say Usopp is just a regular human because he's way stronger. So throughout this video, I'll count up a bunch of instances of the sniper being greater than that. Now, the majority of those with a developed brain can look past all the power scaling or surface level shit to examine his actual character. However, there are still criticisms to cover, so let's get into the analysis.
But the kid is not my son.
Usopp is introduced in the Syrup Village arc, being one of the first 4 Straw Hats. However, before this, he was practically an orphan. The dad had left to sea, with his mom slowly passing from a terminal illness. Despite this, Usopp still looked up to Yasopp, wanting to become a brave warrior of the sea, as his mom still had high opinions of her lover. He would even tell lies about Yasopp returning just to keep her in good spirits. After she passed, he continued to spout the same bluffs to cope with the fact of his parents' departure. He did such to the annoyance of the neighbors, though despite being treated like a nuisance, Usopp never hated the villagers, which is best represented with Kaya. Kaya was terribly ill and had also lost both of her parents, so Usopp would keep her company, telling her insane stories about fictitious adventures. I'm tired of re-saying that. This was all in spite of him not being allowed on the premises of Kaya's mansion. These were all prerequisites to Usopp becoming a brave warrior of the sea. In fact, later on in the arc, we can see him showing the qualities of said warrior. Uso has enough pride to the point of punching Clawdor simply for insulting his pirate lineage. He is also brave enough to solely protect the village from pirates even though everyone thinks he's lying again. He does all of these things even though he's scared shitless and doesn't need to. Plus points 1 and 2 for Usopp not being a regular human, as he's able to snipe 2 grown men with a slingshot while they're quick drawing pistols. Of course, he wouldn't be alone in his struggles, as the Straw Hats admired Usopp's courageousness enough to actually help him. We know how it goes from here. The crew faces the Black Cat pirates. Point 3 for Uso not being normal, as he's able to withstand a stone hammer slamming into the back of his head. Regardless of being in terrible shape, Usopp resolves multiple times that he will stop Kuro and become a brave warrior of the sea. The Kuro pirates laugh at this, leading Luffy to low diff them. But even so, Usopp gets back up in order to snipe Django, basically one-shotting him. After joining the Straw Hats though, it becomes very clear he is not like the rest. His job on the crew is that of a pseudo-combatant slash engineer, but he usually acts cowardly and isn't a master technician. Every other member has some sort of defined role except for him. It was like this for almost 300 chapters. I want you to remember that. Even so, Usopp still puts his life in harm's way and assists the Straw Hats in multiple different avenues, all with him being terrified most of the time. Add 5 points to the Inhuman counter, as he's able to survive getting hit with 10,000 kilograms, 4-ton baseball bats, electric shocks, even dodging lightning bolts from Enel. Around this period, he also gained a tangible endpoint for his dream. After seeing Dory and Bragi fight for absolutely nothing besides their pride, Usopp makes it his goal to visit the land of giants, Elbaf. However, to achieve a goal as grand as such, you need to narrow down your sights, which leads us to the Enies Lobby saga. See, the reality is, the Straw Hats were not a real pirate crew for the first 400 chapters of the story. They were just a solid group of friends which could only work for so long. Water 7 was that limit. In this arc, Luffy is forced to make an actual difficult decision. The argument on whether or not to keep them married was not only about Usopp's own feelings on the subject, yet also on a deeper level. Subconsciously, he realized if the crew kept going how it was, there was no place for him, and that's true. Again, he was fulfilling two different roles, neither of which he was proficient in. While it all led to a heartbreaking fight against his best friend, the events of Enies Lobby changed Usopp for the better. Through these moments, he finally found his role as the sniper. He needed to ease his way into said position by masquerading as Sogeking, though by the end of the arc for the rest of the series, he's able to carry out the task without using a mask. What most people miss is that it's not about Uso needing to fight dangerous 1v1s like the rest of the crew. I don't know if y'all know what a sniper is, but they usually don't go close quarters. That's kind of the whole point. Yet he still manages to save Robin's life, was an integral part in defeating Oars, recaptured Caesar, saved Luffy's life, among many other things. Most of his feats come from assisting other members, which is exactly what he has to do. Just because there wasn't a big punch fight spectacle doesn't mean it didn't happen. If we're talking about the Inhuman counter, this saga gives Usopp like 12 points. He tanks an attack and fights Luffy while injured. He takes multiple hits from the top members of CP9, plus his insane sniper skill. Regardless, by the end of Enies Lobby, the main moment of Usopp's shine didn't come from his skill or job. It was because he was Luffy's friend, which is what allowed the Straw Hats to triumph over CP9. They came out of this arc not as a good group of friends or a formal organization, but a perfect mixture of both. A topic for another video though. The point is, Uso grew exponentially from this experience, allowing him to move in a more focused path towards his goal. However, there's still one major flaw he possesses. Usopp is scared to die. Now, in the real world, this is understandable, but in One Piece, it's made clear very many times that turning to death is the best way to grow. It makes sense because the entire power system is based on will. Will is driven by resolve, so if one resolves to die for their ideals, it means they give the utmost amount of effort in whatever they're trying to achieve. It's the second ever lesson the series teaches us through Kobe. On the surface, Usopp and Kobe may seem like similar, cowardly people. However, when it really comes down to it, Kobe is willing to give up his life for goals/ideals. A lesson he was taught when first meeting Luffy. It's the reason he's able to do stuff like that, whereas Usopp can barely muster observation haki. Yet this is all set to change in the Elbaf arc. He is now at the final destination of his journey, and it has already been hinted Uso's character development is at hand. Even the island itself is symbolic of his struggles. Usopp is surrounded by devil fruit users, Yonko commanders, or literal giants that tower over him, so now he's gonna have to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in some sort of way. It's all more convincing when we look at his performance in Wano. See, Usopp has always had amazing moments of willpower, yet in the Wano arc it was the exact opposite. There are multiple down bad instances of him being an absolute utter coward and nothing else, such as when he condemned the same warrior's death he liked so much in pre-time skip, but the pinnacle of which being when he told Nami to denounce Luffy in order to save her own life, even though that's the exact opposite of what he and all the other Straw Hats have done up to now. Most criticized Oda for writing him this way, yet now we have hindsight. I don't think it's a coincidence that in the arc where every Straw Hat has a good character moment / increase in power, Usopp is the one left out, right before the arc where his final piece of growth lies. For those who think this is far-fetched, Wano and Elbaf are too far apart, or Usopp is just a forgotten character, may I remind you of the 300 chapters I mentioned earlier, where Usopp was completely useless, with his development taking place at the tail end of that. Yeah, Oda plays the long game, and unfortunately, a lot of fans lack the foresight / patience to sit with that. Now, I've heard multiple theories on how Usopp's growth is going to occur, from his death, standing up to Loki, leading the giants, or whatnot. I'm not a theorist, though you get the point. Many hate Usopp because on the outside, he's not cool, he seems useless. Others hate because of the lack of character growth. But hopefully I showed you today why none of this is true and he is still progressing. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean he's not there, as a sniper should be. So after Enies Lobby, it's pretty clear Usopp is not your average person. I don't think I need to defend that, when I showed 20 instances of him being superhuman. In light of that, I want to give a closing section on his actual strength so people can stop downplaying him. It's fairly straightforward. Pre-time skip Usopp is like Sky Pia priest level. That may not sound like much, but keep in mind those priests were wrecking the Straw Hats at some point. Post time skip is more accurate. Despite Wano being his most down bad moment, that's where his scaling comes from. See, Usopp is able to tank multiple headbutts from hybrid ulti. A weaker version of ulti was able to beat a suppressed Luffy with that same attack. Then, even after having his skull crushed, Usopp could still tank another headshot later on. Ulti is greater than base Frankie, who is able to one-tap some Vice Admirals. These same Vice Admirals who can body Mark III pacifistas. All a very convoluted way of saying Usopp is greater than anything pre-time skip. He can defeat a pacifista with mild difficulty. It's ironic how in the recent chapters he lied about beating Oars by himself, because he probably could now. In terms of the broader scale, Usopp is most likely level with Big Mom's officers, Horde, and the Minx. They all have similar feats of being low-end relative to Toby Roppo level fighters. So by no means is he a high tier, not even fucking close. But don't sleep on Usopp either. When people say, can he even beat insert pre-time skip character? Yes, he can, easily.